The archaeology of Israel is the study of the archaeology of the present-day Israel, stretching from prehistory through 3 millennia of documented history. The ancient land of Israel was a geographical bridge between the political and cultural centers of Mesopotamia and Egypt. Despite the importance of the country to 3 major religions, serious archaeological research only began in the 15th century. The first major work on the antiquities of Israel was Adrian Reland's Palestina ex monumentis veteribus, published in 1709. Edward Robinson, an American theologian who visited the country in 1838, published the first topographical studies. A Frenchman, Louis Félicien de Saucy, embarked on the first modern excavations in 1850. In discussing the state of archaeology in Israel in his time, David Ussishkin commented in the 1980s that the designation Israeli archaeology no longer represents a single uniform methodological approach. Rather, its scope covers numerous different archaeological schools, disciplines, concepts, and methods currently in existence in Israel. Archaeological time periods. Neolithic period. The Neolithic period appears to have begun when the peoples of the Nachafian culture, which spread across present-day Syria, Israel and Lebanon, began to practice agriculture. This Neolithic revolution has been linked to the Cold Period known as the Younger Dryas. This agriculture in the Levant is the earliest known to have been practiced. The Neolithic period in this region is dated 8500–4300 BCE and the Chalcolithic 4300–3300 BCE. The term Nachafian was coined by Dorothy Garrod in 1928, after identifying an archaeological sequence at Wadi al-Nachaf, which included a late Lavallois Mousterian layer and a stratified deposit. The Mesolithic of Palestine, which contained charcoal traces and a microlithic flint tool industry. Nachafian sites in Israel include Ain Malaha El Wad, Ein Gev, Hanam Cave Nahal Oren and Kfar HaHaresh. Bronze Age. The Bronze Age is the period 3300–1200 BCE when objects made of bronze were in use. Many writers have linked the history of the Levant from the Bronze Age onwards to events described in the Bible. The Bronze Age and Iron Age together are sometimes called the Biblical period. The periods of the Bronze Age include the following: Early Bronze Age I33303–050 BCE. Early Bronze Age E33050–2300 BCE. Early Bronze Age IV, Middle Bronze Age I230–2000 BCE, Middle Bronze Age II 2000–1750 BCE, Middle Bronze Age IIB 1800–1550 BCE, Late Bronze Age I2 1550–1200 BCE. The Late Bronze Age is characterized by individual city-states, which from time to time were dominated by Egypt until the last invasion by Maritime in 1207 BCE. The Amarna letters are an example of a specific period during the Late Bronze Age when the vassal kings of the Levant corresponded with their overlords in Egypt. Iron Age. Israelite period. The Iron Age in the Levant begins in about 1200 BCE when iron tools came into use. It is also known as the Israelite period. The Israelite period is characterized by large numbers of urban dwellings and a new local culture. The rich and diverse archaeological findings attest to strong international links and trade relations. The abundance of writings found indicate a broad distribution of knowledge among common people of ancient Israel and not just scribes, a unique phenomenon in the ancient world. In this period both the archaeological evidence and the narrative evidence from the Bible become richer, and much writing has attempted to make links between them. A chronology includes Iron Age I 1200–1000 BCE, Iron Age II 1000–925 BCE, Iron Age II BC 925-586 BCE. Iron Age 3586-539 BCE. The traditional view, personified in such archaeologists as Albright and Wright, faithfully accepted the biblical events as history, but has since been questioned by biblical minimalists such as Niels Peter Lemche, Thomas L. Thompson and Philip R. Davies. Israel Finkelstein suggests that the empire of David and Solomon never existed and Judah was not in a position to support an extended state until the start of the 8th century. Finkelstein accepts the existence of King David and Solomon but doubts their chronology, significance and influence as described in the Bible, without claiming that everything in the Bible is historically accurate. Some non-supernatural story elements appear to correspond with physical artifacts and other archaeological findings. Inscriptions such as the Tel Dan stele and the Mesha stele can be traced to a non-Hebrew cultural origin. Persian period, Hellenistic period, Roman period. The Roman period covers the dates 63 BCE to 330 CE. From Pompey the Great's incorporation of the region into the Roman Republic until Rome's adoption of Christianity as the imperial religion. The Roman period itself features several stages. Early Roman period 63 BCE to 70 CE. Middle Roman period 70135 CE 135-200 CE. Late Roman period 200-330 CE. The end of the Middle Roman period marks the end of the predominantly Jewish culture of Judea, but also the beginning of Rabbinic Judaism through Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in the city of Yavna. Therefore, the Late Roman period is also called the Yavna period. Prominent archaeological sites from the Roman period include Mesoda, Herodium, Caesarea Maritima. Byzantine period. The Byzantine period is dated 330–638 CE, from Rome's adoption of Christianity to the Muslim conquest of Palestine. Findings from the Byzantine period include Byzantine period church in Jerusalem Hills, Byzantine period street in Jerusalem, 1,400-year-old wine press. Notable sites: Ashkelon. Archaeological excavation in Ashkelon began in 1985. Led by Lawrence Stager, the site contains 50 feet of accumulated rubble from successive Canaanite, Philistine, Phoenician, Persian, Hellenistic, Roman, Byzantine, Islamic, and Crusader occupation. Major findings include shaft graves of pre-Phoenician Canaanites, a Bronze Age vault and ramparts, and a silvered bronze statuette of a bull calf, assumed to be of the Canaanite period. Beit Alpha. One of the earliest digs by Israeli archaeologists, Beit Alpha is the site of an ancient Byzantine-era synagogue, constructed in the 5th century CE, with a 3-paneled mosaic floor. An Aramaic inscription states that the mosaic was made at the time of Justin, who ruled from 518 to 527 CE. The mosaic is one of the most important discovered in Israel. Each of its 3 panels depicts a scene: the Holy Ark, the Zodiac, and the story of the sacrifice of Isaac. The Zodiac has the names of the 12 signs in Hebrew. In the center is Helios, the sun god, being whisked away in his chariot by 4 galloping horses. The 4 women in the corners of the mosaic represent the 4 seasons. Carmel Caves. Maslia Cave, southwest of Mount Carmel, has been excavated by teams of anthropologists and archaeologists from the Archaeology department of the University of Haifa and Tel Aviv University since 2001. In 2007, they unearthed artifacts indicative of what could be the earliest known prehistoric man. The teams uncovered handheld stone tools and blades as well as animal bones, dating to 250,000 years ago, at the time of the Mousterian culture of Neanderthals in Europe. Mamshit, the Nabatean city of Memphis, was declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO on June 2005. The archaeological excavation at Mamshit uncovered the largest hoard of coins ever found in Israel. 10,500 silver coins in a bronze jar, dating to the 3rd century CE. Among the Nabatean cities found in the Negev, Mamshit is the smallest, but the best preserved and restored. Entire streets have survived intact, and numerous Nabatean buildings with opened rooms, courtyards, and terraces have been restored. Most of the buildings were built in the late Nabatean period, in the 2nd century CE, after the Nabatean kingdom was annexed to Rome in 106 CE. Old Acre declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2001. Acre's old city has been the site of extensive archaeological excavation since the 1990s. The major find has been an underground passageway leading to a 13th century fortress of the Knights Templar. The excavated remains of the Crusader town, dating from 1104 to 1291 CE, are well preserved, and are on display above and below the current street level. Tel Rehof is an important Bronze and Iron Age archaeological site approximately 5 kilometers south of Bade She'arim and 3 kilometers west of the Jordan River. The site represents one of the largest ancient city mounds in Israel, its surface area comprising 120,000 square meters in size, divided into an upper city and a lower city. Archaeological excavations have been conducted at Rehof since 1997, under the directorship of Amihai Mazur. The first 8 seasons of excavations revealed successive occupational layers from the Late Bronze Age and Iron Age. The Iron Age 2 levels of the site have emerged as a vitally important component in the current debate regarding the chronology of the United Monarchy of Israel. In September 2007, 30 intact beehives dated to the mid-10th to early 9th century BCE were found. The beehives are evidence of an advanced honey-producing beekeeping industry 3,000 years ago in the city, then thought to have a population of about 2,000. The beehives, made of straw and unbaked clay, were found in orderly rows of 100 hives. Organic material was dated using carbon-14 radiocarbon dating at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. Also found alongside the hives was an altar decorated with fertility figurines. Tel Be'er, a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2005. Tel Be'er is an archaeological site in southern Israel, believed to be the remains of the biblical town of Be'er. Archaeological finds indicate that the site was inhabited from the Chalcolithic period, around 4000 BCE, to the 16th century CE. This was probably due to the abundance of underground water, as evidenced by the numerous wells in the area, excavated by Yohanan Aharoni and Zev Herzog of Tel Aviv University. The settlement itself is dated to the early Israelite period, probably populated in the 12th century BCE. The first fortified settlement dates to 1000 BCE. The city was likely destroyed by Sennacherib in 700 BCE, and after a habitation hiatus of 300 years, there is evidence of remains from the Persian, Hellenistic, Roman and early Arab periods. Major finds include include an elaborate water system and a huge cistern carved out of the rock beneath the town, and a large horned altar which was reconstructed using several well-dressed stones found in secondary use in the walls of a later building. The altar attests to the existence of a temporal occult center in the city which was probably dismantled during the reforms of King Hezekiah. Tel Megiddo, a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2005. Tel Megiddo comprises 26 stratified layers of the ruins of ancient cities in a strategic location at the head of a pass through the Carmel Ridge, which overlooks the valley of Jezreel from the west. Megiddo has been excavated 3 times. The first excavations were carried out between 1903 and 1905, and a second expedition was carried out in 1925. During these excavations it was discovered that there were 20 levels of habitation, and many of the remains uncovered are preserved at the Rockefeller Museum in Jerusalem and the Oriental Institute of the University of Chicago. Yigal Yadin conducted a few small excavations in the 1960s. Since 1994, Megiddo been the subject of biannual excavation campaigns conducted by the Megiddo Expedition of Tel Aviv University, directed by Israel Finkelstein and David Ashkelon, together with a consortium of international universities. A major find from digs conducted between 1927 and 1934 were the Megiddo stables, 2 tripartite structures measuring 21 meters by 11 meters, believed to have been ancient stables capable of housing nearly 500 horses. Bade She'arim. Bade She'arim is an archaeological site of a Jewish town and necropolis near the town of Kiryat Tivon, 20 kilometers east of Haifa in the southern foothills of the Lower Galilee. Beth She'arim was excavated by Benjamin Mazza and Namin Avigad in the 1930s and 1950s. Most of the remains date from the 2nd to 4th century CE and include the remains of a large number of individuals buried in the more than 20 catacombs of the necropolis. Together with the images on walls and sarcophagi, the inscriptions show that this was a Jewish necropolis. Gath Tel Es Safi. Gath is one of the largest pre-classical sites in Israel, situated approximately halfway between Jerusalem and Ashkelon, on the border between coastal plain and the Judean foothills. The site was settled from prehistoric to modern times, and was of particular importance during the Bronze and Iron Ages, and during the Crusader period. The site is identified as Canaanite and Philistine Gath, and during the Iron Age was one of the 5 main cities of the Philistines. The site was excavated briefly in 1899 by the British archaeologists Frederick Jones Bliss and Robert Alexander Stewart McAllister, and since 1996, by a team from Bar-Ilan University directed by Aaron Meir. Among the noteworthy finds from the ongoing excavations of the impressive late 9th century BCE destruction level, apparently evidence of the destruction of Gath by Hazael of Aram, a unique siege system relating to this event that surrounds the site. A 10th, 9th century BCE inscription written in archaic alphabetic script, mentioning 2 names of Indo-European nature, somewhat reminiscent of the etymological origins of the name Goliath, and a large stone altar with 2 horns from the 9th century BCE destruction level, which, while very similar to the biblical description of the altar in the tabernacle, has only 2 horns, perhaps indicating a unique type of Philistine altar, perhaps influenced from Cypriot and perhaps Minoan culture. Giza. Tel Giza is an archaeological site which sits on the western flank of the Shephelah, overlooking the coastal plain of Israel, near the junction between Via Maris and the trunk road leading to Jerusalem. The Tel consists of two mounds with a saddle between them, spanning roughly 30 acres. A dozen inscribed boundary stones found in the vicinity verify the identification of the mound as Giza, making it the first positively identified biblical city. Giza is mentioned in several ancient sources, including the Hebrew Bible and the Amarna letters. The biblical references describe it as one of Solomon's royal store cities. Giza was excavated by R.A.S. McAllister in 1902 and 1907. Major findings include a soft limestone tablet named the Giza calendar, which describes the agricultural chores associated with each month of the year. The calendar is written in Paleo-Hebrew script, and is one of the oldest known examples of Hebrew writing, dating to the 10th century BCE. Also found was a six-chambered gate similar to those found at Hazor and Megiddo, and 10 monumental megaliths. Megiddo, a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2001. Megiddo is the site of ancient palaces and fortifications in the South District of Israel on top of an isolated rock plateau, or large mesa, on the eastern edge of the Judean desert overlooking the Dead Sea. According to Josephus, a 1st-century Jewish Roman historian, Herod the Great fortified Megiddo between 37 and 31 BCE as a refuge for himself in the event of a revolt. Josephus also writes that in 66 CE, at the beginning of the First Jewish-Roman War against the Roman Empire, a group of Judaic extremist rebels called the Sicarii took Megiddo from the Roman garrison stationed there. The site of Megiddo was identified in 1842 and extensively excavated between 1963 and 1965 by an expedition led by Israeli archaeologist Yigal Yadin. Due to the remoteness from human habitation and the arid environment, the site has remained largely untouched by humans and nature during the past 2 millennia. Many of the ancient buildings have been restored, as have the wall paintings of Herod's 2 main palaces, and the Roman-style bathhouses that he built. A synagogue thought to have been used by the Jewish rebels has also been identified and restored. Inside the synagogue, an ostracon bearing the inscription Mazakon was found, as were fragments of 2 scrolls. Also found were 11 small ostracons, each bearing a single name. One reads Ben-Yer and could be short for Eleazar Ben-Yer, the commander of the fortress. Excavations also uncovered the remains of 28 skeletons. Carbon dating of textiles found in the cave indicate they are contemporaneous with the period of the revolt. The remnants of a Byzantine church dating from the 5th and 6th centuries CE have also been excavated on the top of Megiddo. Tel Arad is located west of the Dead Sea, about 10 kilometers west of modern Arad. Excavations at the site conducted by Israeli archaeologist Yohanan Aharoni in 1962 have unearthed an extensive early Bronze Age settlement that was completely deserted and destroyed by 2700 BCE. The site was then apparently deserted until a new settlement was founded on the southeastern ridge of the ancient city during the Iron Age II. The major find was a garrison town known as the Citadel, constructed in the time of King David and Solomon. A Judean temple, the earliest ever to be discovered in an excavation, dates back to the mid-10th century BCE. An inscription found on the site by Aharoni mentions a house of YHWH, which William G. Dever suggests may have referred to the temple at Arad or the temple at Jerusalem. The Arad Temple was probably demolished around 700 CE, which is before the date of the inscription. Tel Dan. Tel Dan, previously named Tel Lqadi, is a mound where a city once stood, located at the northern tip of modern-day Israel. Finds at the site date back to the Neolithic era circa 4500 BCE, and include 0.8-meter wide walls and pottery shards. The most important find is the Tel Dan stele, a black basalt stele, whose fragments were discovered in 1993 and 1994. The stele was erected by an Aramean king and contains an Aramaic inscription to commemorate his victory over the ancient Hebrews. It has generated much excitement because the inscription includes the letters Hebrew for House of David. Proponents of that reading argue that it is the first time that the name David has been recognized at any archaeological site, lending evidence for the Bible account of David's kingdom. Others read the Hebrew letters as beloved, uncle, kettle, or a god named Dod, and argue this is not a reference to biblical David. Tel Hazar, a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2005. Tel Hazar has been excavated repeatedly since 1955. Other findings include an ancient Canaanite city, which experienced a catastrophic fire sometime in the 13th century BCE. The date and causes of the violent destruction of Canaanite Hazar have been an important issue ever since the first excavations of the site. One school of thought, represented by Yigal Yadin, Yohanan Aharoni and Amnon Ben Tor, dates the destruction to the later half of the 13th century, tying it to biblical descriptions in Joshua which hold the Israelites responsible for the event. The second school of thought, represented by Olga Tufnell, Kathleen Kenyon, P. Beck, Moshe Kochavian, Israel Finkelstein, tends to support an earlier date in the first half of the 13th century, in which case there is no necessary connection between the destruction of Hazar and the process of settlement by Israelite tribes in Canaan. Other findings at the site include a distinctive six-chambered gate dating to the early Iron Age, as well as pottery and administrative buildings dating to either the 10th century and King Solomon or, on a lowered chronology, to the Omrides of the 9th century. Zippori excavations in Zippori, in the central Galilee region, 6 kilometers north-northwest of Nazareth, have uncovered a rich and diverse historical and architectural legacy that includes Assyrian, Hellenistic, Judean, Babylonian, Roman, Byzantine, Islamic, Crusader, Arabic and Ottoman influences. The site is especially rich in mosaics belonging to different periods. Major findings include the remains of a 6th-century synagogue, evidence of an interesting fusion of Jewish and pagan beliefs. A Roman villa, considered the centerpiece of the discoveries, which dates to the year 200 CE, was destroyed in the Galilee earthquake of 363 CE. The mosaic floor was discovered in August 1987 during an expedition led by Eric and Carol Myers of Duke University, digging with Ehud Netzer, a locally trained archaeologist from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. It depicts Dionysus, the god of wine, socializing with Pan and Hercules in several of the 15 panels. In its center is a lifelike image of a young lady, possibly Venus, which has been named the Mona Lisa of the Galilee. Quote, additional finds include a Roman theatre on the northern slope of the hill, and the remains of a 5th-century public building, with a large and intricate mosaic floor. Gesher Bnot Yaakov. Bnot Yaakov Bridge is a 780,000-year-old site on the banks of the Jordan River in northern Israel, currently excavated by Naama Goran Inbar of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. First discovered in the 1930s, Bnot Yaakov had been the site of several excavations that provided archaeologists with crucial information about how and when Homo erectus moved. out of Africa, most likely through the Levantine corridor that includes Israel, one of the rarest prehistoric sites in the world. It featured a remarkable level of organic preservation that archaeologists had not encountered at any other contemporary site in Europe or Asia. In 2000, the Israel Antiquities Authority charged the Sea of Galilee Drainage Authority with causing serious and irreversible damage to the site, while the KDA had procured permission from the IAA to work in a limited area to alleviate the regular flooding of farmland in the adjacent Hula Valley under the supervision of an IAA inspector. Bulldozers entered the site at night, damaging fossil remains, man-made stone artifacts, and organic material. Ain Malaha, a Nachafian village colonized in 3 phases 12,000 to 9600 BCE, contains the earliest known archaeological evidence of dog domestication, the burial of a human being with a dog. Archaeological institutions. During the last 100 years of Ottoman rule in Palestine, Western archaeologists active in the region tended to be Christian, backed by the dominant European powers of the time and the churches. With the transition from Ottoman to British rule over the land, the pursuit of archaeology became less political and religious in nature and instead took on a more purely historical and scientific character. After World War I and the establishment of the British Mandate, archaeological institutions tended increasingly to be concentrated in the city of Jerusalem. In 1913–1914, the Society for the Reclamation of Antiquities was established by the Yeshuv's intellectual elite. Among its founders were Avraham Yaakov Brauer, David Yellin and Aharon Meir Mazi. The society changed its name to the Jewish Palestine Exploration Society in 1920 and later to the Israel Exploration Society. The British School of Archaeology in Jerusalem began operating in 1921, after R.A. Stuart McAllister and Duncan Mackenzie of the Palestine Exploration Fund appealed to the British government for the establishment of a local antiquities authority. McAllister and Mackenzie expressed concern over the dangers posed to archaeological sites on account of the battles being fought throughout the land. Mackenzie was also wary of Falah raiding archaeological sites and stealing artifacts. The Hebrew University of Jerusalem Institute of Archaeology was founded in 1926. In 1934, Hebrew University opened its Department of Archaeology, which it considers the birthplace of Israeli archaeology. The Tel Aviv University Institute of Archaeology was established in 1969. After the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, the British Mandatory Department of Antiquities, housed at the Rockefeller Museum, became the Department of Antiquities of the State of Israel. In 1990, the Department of Antiquities became the Israel Antiquities Authority, an autonomous government authority charged with responsibility for all the country's antiquities and authorized to excavate, preserve, conserve and administrate antiquities as necessary.